Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world, it is your Lore Saviour, and I'm going to be starting this video off with an apology, which is something that I don't really like doing, because I've never thought it's particularly great when a content creator, YouTube, whatever you want to call them, starts off an apology for an absence of content, or whatever the reason may well be, but I feel it's quite important for me to do that now, because I'm feeling quite nervous and on edge. This is like the 6th time that I've attempted to record this video, and it's something that I want to talk about, and it's something I feel very passionate about. But as you have probably seen by the thumbnail and the title, there is bound to be one dickhead that's going to take the piss. In addition to that, I am, going to be a little bit personal. I'm going to be making some leaps and bounds to connect something that is seemingly irrelevant or unrelated to the subject matter or the other things that have been alluded to on the thumbnail and or the title. I haven't quite worked out what I'm doing for either of those yet, but it has made me feel rather happy and comfortable, and this has all happened within the last 24 hours, so the 12th and the 13th of June 2025 in the year of our Lord Talos, sort of like this weird awakening, as I've joked about it with friends. But if I seem a bit off, or I'm stuttering, or I'm and arming, or if my usual upbeat demeanour isn't as present here than it is in other videos of this nature, you now know why. So apologies in advance again, but we're just going to have to share the copium together. So what the fuck am I talking about? If you just saw that I've uploaded a video and just clicked willy-nilly, or would like a bit of context. Well, some friends of mine are putting together a Werewolf the Apocalypse game, specifically Werewolf the Apocalypse 20th Anniversary Edition. We all prefer revised, but the games master has, the storyteller, potato, the storyteller says that the PDF is easier to navigate than revised, which I absolutely agree, so they're just doing it from that basis, and the reason why that's important is because this is going to be a play-by-post game, something they don't have a lot of experience with, but I'm wanting to expand one's horizons a bit more of that, as I'm with more pleasant people and not just a bunch of weird wacko strangers online. We're just a friendly queer wacko bunch. So, just wanting to expand my horizons a little bit and just try something new. Now, I'm also expecting this game not to fall through, because a lot of games fall apart very early on. There's also 7 of us, that's not including the storyteller. And I suspect as we come round to scheduling times and when we can meet up, that number's going to drop very fucking quickly. The games master is based in Australia, most of the players are based in America, and I'm based in England. So I may be the one that may be dropping out, but at the moment I'm really enjoying the process of experimenting and coming up with a character concept, because I've never played Werewolf the Apocalypse as a player before. I've run it a couple times with 5th edition, but this is the first time I've had a true Werewolf the Apocalypse experience, in my totally subjective opinion. And you might have seen, I've got another book down here, because I've kind of worked out the character concept already. I am playing a member of the Red Talon tribe, meaning that I am a lupus, because there are no homids within Werewolf the Apocalypse, and if you've got no idea what those words are, I'll explain those in a moment. And despite my vast knowledge of Werewolf the Apocalypse, he says humbly, I'll be playing a Red Talon Ragabash, who is inexperienced, barely come out of their first change, barely had their rite of passage, which involves them going into the city. It's set in Darwin, which is a town or city in Australia. I should probably do a bit of research about that. Who had to do a series of tasks, to integrate with human life, and they learned to ride a bike there, and I've decided that was going to be part of their rite of passage, so they can act like a sort of courier, so they have something to do as a mortal, so it doesn't seem as weird that you've got this one teenager wandering about with all these other adults, because it's mentioned in said book that Red Talons typically do look a lot younger than other individuals who've had their first change, but hopefully in future recordings I can talk more about that character and talk a bit more about how I am finding the play-by-post experience, because I am in a vampire one as well, because that one's been a bit consistently inconsistent for a whole host of different reasons. But yeah, I'm getting off topic here because I actually want to talk about disability, autism, and Werewolf the Apocalypse. And in case it wasn't aware to you lot, I am autistic. I do consider myself to be disabled from that alone. There are some other factors in that I'm not going to talk about. And I live with a family who are varying levels of disabled as well. So I do feel I have some legitimacy to be talking about some of these different things, but this is going to be primarily from a neurodivergent autistic perspective. So for the context for how I started coming up with this idea, I guess, because it's actually a year-long endeavour, a little journey, as it were. When I started talking about Werewolf the Apocalypse lore on the channel and our lore dives, roughly a year ago, one of the first episodes I did with that is talking about the different forms and the breeds of the Garou. The different types of werewolf, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, like how you are born. If a werewolf and a human clap cheeks together, you are born as a homage, so you look like a human. If two werewolves or Garou get it on, they are born as a metis, which I'm going to be referring to as Krynos spawn for a whole host of culturally appropriative reasons, and it also just makes a bit more sense. And then you have lupus, which is where a werewolf and a regular wolf clap cheeks and get it on, and that is what my character is going to be. When I was putting together that episode, and I was doing loads of extensive reading with my big pile of books, which is roughly where the laptop is when I'm recording this. It's a big tower of things, reading through different source books and reading through the core books, I was sort of getting an impression from its writing that there were a lot of similarities between neurodiverse and lupus behaviours, in that when a werewolf goes through their first changes, when they like pop into the Krynos form, which is like your big stereotypical werewolf form. Now, a human turning into a werewolf and then learning to turn into a wolf is a very bizarre experience for sure, because you're bigger, you've got more fur, you are more aware of your different senses, sight, smell, taste, hearing, all the rest of it, because wolves are generally more susceptible to that sort of thing, and humans just now having to getting used to that sensory overload and those sensitivity issues as well, like transition from one to the other. Now, for a lupus, you have that same problem, but in the inverse. But also, when you're then forced to move into a city, because that's where a lot of the action is going to be taking place to combat the forces of the Weaver and the Wyrm, you also have a load of other noises to deal with. It's a lot more loud, it's a lot more chaotic, it's a lot more disorganised. It smells of shit, it smells of piss, it smells of petrol, humans stink, animals stink, the general air stinks. Like, there's just so much more to think about now as a human, and that's even the fact that you consider that when you transform from a wolf to a human, all those senses are dulled. So to deal with that and then be aware that all your senses are worse, that's very overwhelming. And there's a couple of instances in some of the source books and the core books where it's very important for packs of wolves / lupus to pull themselves away from all this human action and be themselves, to strip off the human mask, as it were, and just be themselves and do the things that they enjoy for their sake, so they can just be themselves without any judging or criticism, which was the first thing I kind of noticed with the Neurodivergence Werewolf the Apocalypse crossover, as it were. As someone who's autistic, I have my safe spaces, I have my obsessions, I have my little hobbies and routines that give me some semblance of control in a forever changing world that quite frankly wants people like me dead. You know, I've been a bit extreme about that, but let's be real here. If certain people with power had their way, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. And when I did my lore dive on the different breeds and the forms in which the werewolf transforms from humid to glabro, which is like the man wolf, Krynos, which is the werewolf proper, Hispo is like the dire wolf, and lupus is the wolf, and then doing that with the breeds as well. Some people did pick up on the fact that I really did lean into like the neurodiversity aspect of that, which I do have to say I don't think the writing in that was intentional at the time, given the fact that those books were sort of released between the late 90s and early noughties. You know, just to be really crude about it, I do think that the writers just sat down and thought, okay, we're going to need a tribe of werewolves that are all wolves, that they have no human amongst them, maybe a few Krynos spawn here and there. We're going to have loads of different warrior types. Okay, so we've got the Vikings, we've got the Celtics. Oh, we should probably put in the Amazonian warriors in there as well, you know, just a bit of diversity. We've got to put some kings and queens and nobility into there as well. And let's make a crude political comment saying that they're all white, European, and terribly inbred. Like, I kind of feel that those are sort of the things that they're all going for. Obviously, fleshing things out with their own cultures and histories to make them more interesting and engaging for readers and players. And not how I've just described them, which, as I just said, is a little bit crude. But intentional or otherwise, those distinctions do exist in the text, and they do help people like myself to feel to be seen. And that sort of goes a bit further with the reading of the Red Talon's revised tribe book. Now, I haven't read the first one, but the way that this tribe book is presented, I think, is very interesting in relation to all the other tribe books before and after it. And that's also including the Changing Breed books as well for second and a little bit of revised edition as well. It's very clear from how they're laid out and their headings that they're divided up in different periods of time so the human reader can identify with whatever it is they're talking about, whether it's the Dark Age or the Renaissance, you know, the discovering of the Americas, so forth. Like, all of that's there so the readers can, like, pinpoint that exactly. With the Red Talons, it's not. You have the headings to break things up, and if you know the Wealthy Apocalypse lore, which, to be frank, if you read into this far into the book, you're probably aware of it, it's not really broken up in those sort of headers and styles, and it's not a real clear distinction about the periods of time where things are happening, because the concept of time for the Red Talons is pretty non-existent. If anything, it's just a constant pattern of sunrise and sunset, day and night, because why would any of that mean anything to them? They are, at the end of the day, wolves. They're not human. And everything else that the humans dictate upon them are all human constructs on the werewolves, on the wolves. It's not something that they need to relate to. And this is kind of leading into that idea that we all know about the Red Talons, is that the Red Talons all hate humans. They wish they were dead. They're making werewolves' lives worse. They're hunting wolves out of extinction. Everything that's gone wrong in the world is to do with humans, which, let's be frank, a fair amount of it is. And that's not really doing the Red Talons justice, and I do say that they are the most misunderstood tribe amongst all the tribes within Wealthy Apocalypse. And I know a lot of people are going to say the Get of Fenris or the Cult of Fenrir if we're going to be using 5th edition terminology, and we're going to pretend that 5th edition doesn't really exist because it's an apocalyptic abomination of a rebrand, but I've talked about that in my review, which is going to appear somewhere, someplace, somehow for you to go and listen to. Because the Red Talons don't all hate humans. Some are mildly curious, some just resent them but just keep their distance because, you know, they are encroaching on their land and they don't have the right to be there. Like, the wilderness does not belong to the humans. They've made their turf on their lands and they're just being greedy and just stretching things out. And then you have some that basically do go around and fucking kill and eat humans by the dozen. Like, they're these different camps or factions that each of the different tribes have, and the Red Talons is quite frankly through the different extremities about how much we love or hate humans. Like, the ones where they're the most sympathetic are known as Whelp's Compromise, just to give you an idea about how nicely they are perceived within the Red Talons. But the Red Talons are also a lot more than just their relationship with humans. They're actually a very spiritual bunch, and I find that really engaging. And you can actually see that a lot with the artwork in the book as well. The art in that book is done by mainly two people, Ron Spence, or Spencer, I can't remember which one it is, whose art style for Werewolf is incredibly iconic, like this almost over-the-top, muscular, vicious werewolf style, which is a great way to hone in that the Red Talons are very much wolves. They are perhaps the most wolf, the most werewolf of the bunch, but a lot of it is also done by Drew Tucker, whose style I really do enjoy because it's like borderline impressionistic, and in this case very tribal, and very much open interpretation about what the scenes are portraying to the viewer, reader, whatever. And given that this is a tribe that doesn't really communicate in written texts other than the occasional glyph, they like don't keep written records or anything, I think that's a beautiful way of like depicting their very culture and their nature. And a lot of the prophecies surrounding the Wealthy Apocalypse lore has stemmed from what the Red Talons have seen, or individual members of that tribe have seen. So there is a lot of nuance there, and the tribe book as well goes into a lot of detail about portraying a wolf. And a lot of the cultures of the lupus within Wealthy Apocalypse really does stem from that as well, or it really is put under the microscope, comes to a head, whatever sort of analogy you want to put there. And I can never say that word properly, so we're just going to have to deal with that. And it also comes from the fact that they have more understanding and sentience than other wolves. Like, they know they're different, they know they stand out amongst their kin, and the humans as well, they're going to struggle. They know that they're going to get picked on because they're doing things a little bit differently no matter how hard they try. Sure, Red Talons being predators and wolves, they're just going to fucking knuckle down and get onto it, but they also have all the emotional shit that comes with being part human, and all the rage that comes with being a werewolf. And then if they get things wrong and you just get them on the wrong moment or the wrong day, they may go into a frenzy or rage out, and nobody particularly likes it when anybody gets particularly angry, especially if you're disabled, neurodivergent, of colour, a woman, heaven forbid that you're all of those at once, and people just think you're being emotional or you just can't control yourself. and the only way that people tend to listen to said minorities is when people get angry and they raise their voice, or to put into more cultural topics, you have peaceful protests and media spins that as like violent riots, you know, which again, as I kind of bred into that, is very much relatable to somebody who's disabled, neurodiverse, or fits into any sort of minority group. And I'm just focusing a bit more on the disabled and the neurodiverse bit, because that's obviously the bit I can relate to the most, because it's a very social aspect of Werewolf the Apocalypse, and trying to walk the fine line between being the bumbling idiot who doesn't know anywhere, who's clearly an alien as sort, like trying their best to fit in, and like just not being a Red Talon at all. You just want an excuse to be a wolf a lot more in Werewolf the Apocalypse, and the Red Talons are just an easy way of doing that. Yeah, it sort of made me realise a little bit just how much I resonate with the Red Talons more, just beyond the disdain for humanity and how they just feel we're all falling apart, and I kind of feel that many of us are beyond the point of redemption. But it's a weird realisation that a lot of the frustration of the Red Talons have with everyone around them is that no one really takes them all that seriously. They're the spiritual bunch, but no, they just hate people. They're werewolves too, but they're just lesser because they just exist at wolves. Yeah, sure, it's doing a great harm to their numbers, but the Garou aren't exactly known for being creatures of change now, are they? Like, the Garou are more so defined by what they're not rather than what they are. They are not a nation. They are squabbling, bickering children that couldn't organise a piss-up at a brewery. And really, the Red Talons, as misguided as they may be, they've got their shit down. Like, they have to protect the wolves, otherwise there's not going to be them, and there's not going to be a lot of the Garou left. And they know that should they charge into the mouths of the Wyrm tomorrow, they're not going to be the ones that are going to be surviving, but they're going to be doing their bit to survive, you know, to delay the inevitable. But just going back to the more social element of things that I was rambling on about before I got sidetracked with the side rambling within the rambling, there's a lot within that social dynamic and the lack of thereof that I just find very appealing, and something that I resonate with a lot, as I keep saying, because throughout media there has not been a lot of great representations of autism. Like, on the Mount Rushmore of autistic representations, you've got Sheldon Cooper, The Big Bang Theory. More recent years, you've got that fucking dude from The Good Doctor that everybody was making a meme about, and you have fucking right-wing dickheads using him as a fucking saint because he, for a part of an episode, didn't acknowledge that trans rights was a thing. And you have Rain Man, which has never been autistic. He's been a savant, and I served detention at a school because I was arguing with a psychology teacher, saying that how offensive it was. And I bet my fucking arsehole that same teacher is still using Rain Man, and teachers across the world are using Rain Man as sources for autistic people representation. When and you have fucking music from Sears' Abomination of Music. I don't remember how fucking heads there are on Mount Rushmore. There's 4 or 5 of them, but yeah, we don't have a lot of great representation. There are lots of really great ones for sure, but most of them are accidental and or not intended to be autistic. So we have to do a lot of reading into things as well to find things that we can resonate with. I'm saying we as like a neurodiverse autistic sort of thing, because if you think about kids who grow up want to play in sports, or people like playing basketball, football, American and English, rugby, baseball, whatever, they've got people to look up to in the fucking hundreds or tens or whatever. Same with musicians. I don't know how you would put that to other fields, but like if you're wanting to be an engineer, there might be somebody at school who could help you, or your dad, or whatever, or there might be some big fucking celebrity or whatever, but there really isn't a lot of that with autism. And it's not like I can turn off a fucking switch in my head and not be autistic for a bit. Like, autism is a neurological thing. It's of the mind. It's my brain. It's literally my brain. So everything that I say or do, or every character that I play and portray, or NPCs that I bring in, even existing NPCs from, you know, source books and City by Night books, they are like bathed in some degree of autism, because that's just who and what I am. I can't do anything about that. So it's really nice whenever I find something in media that I can relate to, intentional or otherwise, because I just don't get it anywhere else, which is really frustrating. And I know this is also going to lead into a lot of other people saying you play TTRPGs, you can be anything and everything that you want to. Like, why do you want to intentionally play something that's autistic? Because if I didn't make it clear from what I was talking about earlier on, or the whole purpose of this video, I am wanting to use this character to explore elements of my autism a bit more through this analogue of this werewolf whose name I haven't decided yet, and they don't have any gender either because they are a fucking wolf. Some give birth, some breed, you know, the concept of gender is just non-fucking existent to them. I don't see why anything would ever care about that, so I'm sorry if that's going to annoy some of you. Maybe some people would want to, you know, insert themselves into that position, even if it's like a base level of like masquerading as one of the humans, but that's not what I'm wanting to go for. I'm really wanting to focus on that aspect of the character, so if you don't like it, gargle my balls. It's not your fucking game and it's not your fucking character. But going back to what I was saying, like, why do I actively want to explore something like that? Why could I just not be something different? Well, just pay attention to the fucking autistic ramble I just had a moment ago. You need to understand that that sort of language can be particularly harmful, because that is sort of putting a blame on the disabled person, that life would be better if that element of that person would disappear, when really it's a very core part of them, whether they were disabled from birth or it's something that they've got later on in their life. It has like a neurological disease that has like broken them down over time, or like a horrible accident where they've lost both their legs, for an example. Like, it makes them the issue, it makes them the problem, and if that element of them was gone away, they would be a better person, they would be happier. And for a lot of people, that would be the case. I'm not going to deny that. There are plenty of people who would like to be able to walk again, who would not like to be in pain all the time. But for a lot of disabled people, neurodiverse, autistic, as I said a moment ago, it's very difficult for some to think about what life would be if they didn't have these things wrong with them, that they didn't have these problems and differences and difficulties to overcome. And that might seem really unusual to you, but if you're somebody who has been unable to walk for most of their life or all of their life, to think about a position where you are able to walk is, at the very least, weird to think about. And when I get asked sometimes by people, what's it like being autistic, that kind of implies to me there was a period of my life where I wasn't autistic, that I just woke up one day, slipped on a piano peel, hit my head, and now I'm autistic. Like, it makes me laugh because it's just such, to my mind, a fucking stupid question. Like, as with all aspects of life, there is its ups and downs and there is difficulties, but you learn to don't cope with them, you learn to deal with them, because you recognise that you have these issues and you find your way to go about handling these things, even if you go through your life not knowing that you're autistic or you get diagnosed late in your life. Like, I was fortunate enough to be in a position that I was diagnosed when I was 3 years old, so I've grown up in my life knowing what, like, the autistic signs, the things to work out for, and I've known which of the different stereotypes that apply to me and how I cope with them, or in many cases don't cope with them particularly well if things go awry. But I know plenty of people who are late diagnosed who have struggled all of their life, and they're just slowly working things out, like how this is why that they act this way, this is why they feel this way, this is why they think this way. If you are a wheelchair user, you know that you're going to struggle with some things. And also, just using the wheelchair thing as an example, because there sort of ties in a little bit with the whole discussion regarding combat wheelchairs. Why would you want to play as somebody who's disabled when magic exists? Again, some people may not be able to properly appreciate's not the right word, like, able to comprehend, understand what it's like to be able to do that. And also, not everybody who uses a wheelchair is bound to their wheelchair. Like, using wheelchair bound is rather offensive in that sense, because if some people can get up about and they do things and they have limited movement and they can do some things, but they just need a wheelchair a lot of the time. I have plenty of friends who are like that. I've grown up in my life seeing plenty of people like that. And yeah, I have also seen lots of people who are bound to a wheelchair for one reason or another. But I would still refer to them as a wheelchair user, because user puts a level of humanity into it, rather than saying wheelchair bound, which confines them to this chassis. Wheelchairs allow people to go up and do things, to be able to function in society. They are an aid. And a lot of you are disabled, but you're just not willing to admit it. If you're wearing glasses, you are disabled. Just going to put that one out there. And your vision may be really bad, or it might just need a little bit of help reading things up close, but disabled people are everywhere, and they have a right to be characters that represent themselves so they can be seen and felt and have their voices and stories contributing towards a game. It's just allowing different people in to tell their different stories because they have a perspective and a spin on things. Like the recent Snow White live action film is a fucking train wreck as that film was. One of the things I really wish that Disney hadn't done is they fucking listened to Peter Dinklage, because that removed so many jobs from little people from playing the dwarves. A lot of people would have been really fucking happy that, because, like everybody else, they would have grown up, love seeing fucking Snow White. But, that's a conversation of a different time. And I'm sort of getting a bit off topic here with this bit of rambling and waffling, like moved away a bit from Werewolf the Apocalypse. And funny enough, when I've mentioned this whole neurodiverse thing with wolves with the friends that I'm doing this game with, as a player, I'm not the one running it, as I mentioned earlier on, a lot of them have come forward and said, yeah, I've seen these sort of comparisons to autism and the werewolf stuff before. I know plenty of trans people have been able to use that to help them with their transitioning and like discovering their identity, their gender, the lack of thereof as well. So I do think that's a pretty cool thing. And very recently there was a conversation on the Lore by Night Discord server where very similar things are happening regarding Changeling the Dreaming. So that's made me a bit more interested to like start reading it and like getting the first and second editions and comparing that to the 20th anniversary edition. But it's been nice in those moments to feel seen and heard, that I'm just not mad, that I'm not interpreting or portraying these elements wrong, that I'm just not grasping at straws and just wanting to be noticed somehow, that there are other people who feel that way, that other viewers of that one video that I mentioned are like that. And not only that, I'm also with a really cool group of people who are actually encouraging me to pursue this so I can just find a voice, to find some joy out of Werewolf the Apocalypse. Because one of the struggles I've had with this game is that all the tribes are really fucking cool. Like with Vampire the Masquerade clans, there's certain clans I can hardly see myself playing, and that doesn't include like the many different niche bloodlines, but like I'm talking like the main clans. Like I played Adventure once, I don't think I'm ever going to play one again. But with Werewolf, they're also cool and diverse, and these different neurodivergent minority themes really does feed well into an element that I didn't think I was ever going to find. And when I first started to properly get into Werewolf the Apocalypse, when Different Tales wanted me to do a preview and review of Heart of the Forest all those many years ago, I was just really emotionally taken aback by how spiritual all it was. And I said in that it actually moved me to tears. And I know that might sound ridiculous to some of you, but if you've gone to this point in the video, you really shouldn't be fucking surprised. But reading more about it and engaging with the material and engaging with people who are passionate, rather than it's just, well, when will you rage? They're just the enemies of vampires sort of thing. It's really helped me find a voice to explore parts of myself in games that I wouldn't usually be able to explore. Because yeah, we talk about vampires being gay and diverse, and gender again doesn't really mean much for them. But I haven't really seen that explored much in games. Which sounds bizarre, given how queer the TTRPG space is, how queer the actual play space is, in particular Vampire. But if I'm completely honest, I feel a lot of that is just borderline let's be horny and express ourselves that way. Which I have to say is totally valid, especially when it pisses off fucking right-wing dickheads who, clothe up their wives and their daughters, not letting them express themselves at all, just keeping them caged up in their houses and back in the fucking kitchen. But I also don't like PDA, public display of affection, so I just find that element of it just a bit cringe. But at the same time, I do feel that Vampire the Masquerade can just be perceived as horny for horny's sake, especially with some of its most recent books. And you can tell I feel comfortable talking about this bit in particular because I'm now using closed body language. But with Werewolf the Apocalypse and how I've engaged it with its most passionate of fans, people who have been playing it longer than I've been alive, there's just been a lot of passion regarding the minority aspect of it and found family. Which, the idea that family isn't necessarily the people that you're born into, not necessarily the people who you live with. It's the people that you feel safe and comfortable around with. They could be your friends, they could be a partner or partners, they could just be you and your pets. Like, family is found, it's not within the blood. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing. And that's, of course, within the Werewolf the Apocalypse thing, because you're in a pack of werewolves that stick together through the ups and downs. You're all striving for a common goal. You have all your differences. You're going to love each other one moment, you're going to hate each other another bit, but you're really trying to make odd ends meet, and you all have the same sort of issues. And I find that more in the writing with Werewolf than I do with Vampire, because with that it's just a matter of survival and political backstabbing. It's not really encouraged as much to stick together and look out for each other than it's just a predatory instinct of like protecting each other for as long as you can. Werewolf does have all of that as well, but from the little micro-fictions to how things are explained, there does feel a sense of family, a sense of belonging, and it's all very touching. And coming in from a neurodiverse aspect where you feel like a stranger, you feel like an alien, you often feel like an outsider. Every time I open my fucking mouth, I'm fearful of someone taking the piss. And I'm not joking or exaggerating with that at all. It's very frustrating, and it sort of puts you in a constant state of anxiety and stress. It's really assuring having a game like this where you fight against those that don't understand you, that are trying to ruin things for everyone. It's a very beautiful experience.
Hi, Future Lore here. There was one very specific detail that I forgot to mention, and I even wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it, and yet here we are, I guess. Now, Werewolf the Apocalypse is actually very pro-disabled anyway. Like, one of the later editions, not 5th edition, had like wound scars. That's what they're called, a scar, where you like take a very significant injury and you're unable to use a particular limb, or you lose something, or you incur like some other sort of physical scar. You take a load of glory with that. Now, obviously, this is the more stereotypical idea of, see, look what they have done to sacrifice in order to protect us, look at what they did to save you, that sort of mentality. But it's also a celebration of who they are now and what they're going to do despite these setbacks, which I think is a very fucking cool thing. And again, I might just be stretching an arsehole really fucking wide here, but one of the things that makes me feel that this is more the intention rather than just an accidental side point is that in Changing Ways, one of the things that that book adds is that they make it a absolute priority for the Garou to go after a missing limb and try and stick it back on and like have the flesh knit itself back together, which was never a thing at all with the old editions of Werewolf. And that book is like extraordinarily sexist, transphobic, racist, ableist. So I like to think that the original intention, the one I've just told you about, was the intention that it's not just a celebration of the Garou that you were, but it's the celebration of the Garou that you are now and who you're going to become and how you're going to overcome that and just basically cope with a general day-to-day life sort of thing, which is kind of what I've been going on about for the last, 5 or so minutes. And Emma here is trying to pull my own off here, really wanting to groom me, so I'll do my best to stop her now, and you can carry on with the slightly better audio quality.
Even on just someone who reads and engages with the material, and now being able to participate in that as a player, hopefully, if the time schedules and whatnot don't fall apart, is something I'm really looking forward to. Even if it's just a play-by-post thing and I won't be able to, like, do the more optimal method of, like, mic, camera, body language and all the rest of it. But it does mean I can give a bit more thought to what I'm saying and, like, make sure that I'm portraying things correctly, which is, again, is something that I'm worrying about constantly as an autistic person, as I've said already. But it allows me just to dig a bit more into that character and, and hopefully include all the things that I want to include within the realms of the roleplay. So again, I don't think any of this writing regarding neurodiverse, trans, queers is intentional with the Apocalypse. It might well be. I do actually I take that back. I think with some instances regarding the Bone Gnawers, I think it's very fucking deliberate. And you have to read in between the lines a little bit to get what they're about. I don't think it's intentional with the Red Talons, and I think for a lot of the Apocalypse it's not intentional. But I'm just really fucking happy that I just have this little pocket that I've just read into that's just made me feel a bit happy that I can have a look at these themes and feel seen and represented as an autistic person who is constantly made to mask and pretend I'm somebody that I'm not, so I fit in until I feel comfortable enough to open my shell by both friends, strangers, and in some instances my family. That I can just be autistic. And I think that's just an incredibly beautiful thing.